Hello, in this video we're going to be factoring quadratics again, but this time they're going to have an a value that is different than 1. So we're going to start out with this first one, and again I'm going to go from multiplying the binomials to getting the simplified answer, and then we're going to work backwards. So first of all, I have these two binomials, x plus 2, 5x plus 1. I've done the box method of finding the simplified answer, which is 5x squared plus 11x plus 2. Now we're going to reverse the process. So we're going to figure out what a, b, and c are. So a is 5, b is 11, c is 2. Again, same as from the last video, it's from standard form here. The 2, as you can see, is the same as previously. It's from this corner. It comes from the last two numbers multiplied together. The 5 is the same way. It's in this corner. The 5x squared, it comes from these two things being multiplied together. What's different when we have an a value different than 1 is these two numbers are no longer the addition of the 2 and the 1. So that's what makes these types of problems more complicated. As you can see, this 10x is a combination of the 2 and the 5. Okay, so regardless of how or why it's different, we have to have some different techniques for this type of problem. So the first technique is we need to find a, b, and c. That's the same. The second thing where it's different is we need to find factors of ac that add to b. Okay, so factors of ac that add to b. So it's almost the same. Before we were finding factors of c that add to b. Now it's factors of AC. So AC in this case is equal to 10. And so the factors are going to be, well, you could have 1 and 10, 2 and 5. 1 and 10 works. So 1 and 10. Okay, now it's still different. I'm going to make the box here. Now keep in mind we wouldn't have this box because we would have started with this problem. Okay, so now we're going to make the box and we're going to reverse this process. So we know that this has a 5x squared in it because that's where this term comes from. And we know this box has a 2 in it because that's where this term comes from. What we don't know is what's in these two boxes. Okay, but we just figured out what the coefficients of those two boxes are. We have a 1, which is 1x, right, because both of these have an x in them. And it doesn't matter where it goes. Can go here or here. And then the other one is a 10x. Okay. Again, it's different than this box, but the diagonal is the same. So I could have put 10x up here and x down here. It doesn't matter. All right, so now what we're going to do is find the greatest common factor of each row and column. Okay, so first we'll start here with this row. 5x squared and x, what do they have in common? They have an x in common. And 10x and 2, what do they have in common? A 2. Here, a 5x squared and a 10x have 5 and x in common. And then x and 2 have nothing in common. So we're actually going to have to put a 1 here. That's positive. This 2 is positive. As you can see, we end up with 5x plus 1 on top and x plus 2 on the bottom, which is what we started with. Keep in mind, it doesn't matter the order because 2 times 5 is the same as 5 times 2. It doesn't matter which one you put first. Okay, so let's put this into action. I have some step-by-step instructions here. So first we're going to find a, b, and c. So a equals 10, b equals 31, c equals negative 14 in this case. So I need factors of ac that add to b. So ac in this case is equal to negative 140. It's a pretty big number, so that can be possibly a pain to figure out factors of it. So we're going to have a negative 1 somewhere. So one of these numbers is going to have to be negative, so we can deal with that later. So we could have Actually, I'm going to take out the negative. We just have to know that we're going to subtract these to get to 31. So we could have 14 and 10. But when you subtract those, you get 4. So they're going to have to be much farther apart. So maybe, so we have a 2 and a 7 and a 2 and a 5. Whatever we come up with, it has to be made out of these 4 numbers. So it could be 28 and 5. That wouldn't work. Could be 35 and 4. That works. So positive 35 and negative 4. Okay, so now we're going to make the box and fill it in. So the top left is going to be the same as that, so 10x squared. Bottom right is going to be this, negative 14. And then these diagonals have to be a 35 and a negative 4, both with an x. So 35x and negative 4x. All right, now we're going to factor the rows we can start with. So 10x squared and 35x, they both have 5x in common. Negative 4x and negative 14 have a, since they're both negative, we can factor out a negative 2. To decide whether your factors should be negative or positive, I would just use the closest box. So since this is negative, factor out a negative. And I'll show you up on the top how that changes the top. So negative 2 looks like the only thing they have in common. And now up top, we have a positive and a negative number. Since the closest box is positive, let's just keep it positive. So 10x squared and 4x have a 2 and an x in common. And then these two have a 7. Again, we're going to keep it positive. Have a 7, and that's it. Alright, so we've filled in the box, we've factored the box, so we think our answer is 5x minus 2, and then 2x plus 7. Let's add a step 5 to our notes. And it should say check your answer, because these are really easy to check. So it would be a shame to do all that work and not double check to see if you're right. So 5x times 2x is 10x squared. That's good. Negative 2 times 7 is negative 14. And then we'll have a negative 4x from those, and then a 35x from those, which would be 31x. So we're good. Let's try another. So here we have 4w squared minus 5w minus 6. Step 1, we're going to figure out a, b, and c. You should pause the video and see if you can do this on your own. And you can resume it and see if you did it right. Alright, so a, b, c. I need factors of ac, which is negative 24, that add to b, which is negative 5. So factors of negative 24 that add to negative 5. Alright, so 24 and negative 5. So to get a negative number from multiplication, one of them has to be negative. And then if one of them's negative and one's positive, the bigger one's going to have to be negative because the answer is negative. So let's see, 2 and 12, that doesn't work. 3 and 8. Okay, 3 and 8. So 3 and negative 8 should work. Let's make our box. So inside the box we have a 4w squared on the top left. We have a negative 6 on the bottom right. And then we have a 3x and a negative 8. Or sorry, these are w's. So we have a 3w and a negative 8w. Again, doesn't matter which one goes where. Now we factor. So this row has a 4 and a w in common. This row has a 3 in common. this column has a W, and this column has, looks like a -2. So we think the answer is 4W plus 3 and W minus 2. Let's check it. So 4W squared minus 6 over here, and then we have a -8W plus 3W, so that's going to be a -5W. So sounds like we've got it. Keep in mind, this is not the answer down here. This is the answer. This is just a check to see if the answer was correct. Alright, last thing we need to know before we can stop the video is sometimes when you get a problem, all of the terms have something in common right from the get-go. Notice that hasn't happened here. All these terms do not have anything in common because this doesn't have a W, 2 doesn't go into everything, 5 doesn't go into everything. In this one, they did not have anything in common. Same thing with this one, nothing in common. But in this one, they do. They all have a 4 in common. So the very first step when you're doing something like this is to factor out a 4. So if you factor out a 4 from this, you're left with 3p squared. Factor out a 4 from here, you get 5p, and factor out a 4 from there, you get -2. And you can double check that you did that correctly by multiplying it back and seeing if you get the original, right? 12p squared, 20p, -8. So from here, we can just kind of leave the 4 off to the side for a moment. I mean, it's got to be in the answer, but we can figure out our A, B, and C. So A is going to equal 3, B is going to equal 5, C is going to equal -2. AC equals -6, B is 5, so we need factors of -6 that add to 5. One of these has to be negative, so it could be a 6 and -1, because those would add up to 5. And we're going to make our box. So keep in mind that 4 is still out there. I'll show you what we'll do with it at the end. Alright, so our box should have a 3p squared here. Should have a -2 here, and then since it's p, so 6p and a -1p. We don't have to put the 1. Alright, let's deal with the rows first. They both have a 3 and a p. This one, nothing in common except the negative, so I'm going to put -1. This column has a p, and this column has a 2. Okay, so we think that the answer is going to be 3p minus 1 times p plus 2. Now this, notice this 4 needs to be multiplied to everything. So if you just put it out here, that's what it's doing. It's being multiplied to everything. The easiest way to check your answer is probably just to check that these two things equal this trinomial here, because we already double checked to see if the 4 was correct. So if we know that this is correct, then we're okay. So 3p squared, check. -2, check. 6p minus 1p is 5p. So we're good to go. This is the final answer. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.